What's going on, Axie fam? Elijah here, back with another video, and today we are going to be discussing the recent changes, the balance changes which have been released by Axie Infinity. Now, before you freak out about anything, just remember that this is the trial period and nothing is set in stone yet, which is a new tweak that they have made to their balancing process. After last season, we ran into some hiccups that if we would have caught earlier or adjusted earlier, would have made for a smoother season. So here we are with some changes, but nothing officially set. And I want to point out that before we get into the details, I am super happy to see this tweet from Jiho that he's looking through the feedback for Season 20. Here's what stands out. He's got some notes here. Making Scarab as a debuff is pretty terrible because you're usually playing that to counter plants that have Bidens. And Bidens now is a super hard counter to Scarab. Since you can play that, they can remove the debuff. So I think that that's going to get fixed. Otherwise, no one is going to use Scarab. Like, literally no one. The anemone nerf being harsh, I think 1437 really voiced that. I really don't love that build, the double anemone bird, but I understand that if you completely kill it, that affects a lot of people, especially scholars. So taking off as much damage as they did is probably a little overkill. I do think it needs a nerf. It's super strong, that build, and doesn't really require that much strategy. It's very RNG dependent, which I think isn't very good for the game. So we'll have to see what happens. Little Owl, I don't really know why they nerfed it. He's kind of acknowledging that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to take it from 20 to 10 damage. But what's great is that it's never been like this in the past. Usually they release the change and the season starts and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Here we're getting adjustments, which I love. Now let's start at the top here with Gravelant. Disables targets melee cards when comboed with another card. Now I think that's a step in the right direction. I know this card has been complained about for just since I've been playing Axie. It's been complained about, and I understand because it eliminates a lot of cards. You know, the majority of cards in Axie are melee, but at least what this does is if you're in a really close game, they can't just drop the one Gravelant. They have to pair it with a card which thins out their hand a little bit, and even if you have one range card, it makes your chances of winning a little higher. Twin Tail nerf to 35 damage. I like that. You know, now mechs, they've also fixed the skill bonus, so this just does a clean 35 damage on mechs to classes such as Aquas instead of almost 50 damage, which was absolutely absurd. Cerastus, now I don't love this one. You know, 90 to 80, I understand it's probably one of the more used cards, but the problem is when you drop down to 80, we're back in that territory when no one used Cerastus. Back in the day when I started, it was 80 damage, no one touched it because it just doesn't really do that much even with the bonus. Maybe we meet in the middle here. 85, I'd like to see 85 damage on Cerastus. I think that could work. Now Hero going to 55, I think that's reasonable. It's a really strong card for a zero cost, and you draw cards when hitting Aquas and Birds, which is actually pretty frequent that that's going to happen. Dark Swoop we touched on already. I think that'll go back to 20 most likely. Winghorn getting dropped is nice as well. I think the damage, at least, you know, the amount that can chip away at you on a double poison team is pretty crazy, with the grass snakes doing a fair amount of damage themselves, plus all the poison charges. So I like this one too. Sneaky Raid, going to 30 shield, again kind of targeting probably the abundance of grass snake that was out there last season. Not a major change since you're normally not defending and playing this card at the same time anyway. Not too relevant. Hoope down to 65. I don't really get it. No one was really using this card. I kind of like to see it at 70 because it's a bug card. It's not really going to perform that well in a lot of different classes. Biden's going to 45 is fantastic. This card is just flooding the arena, has been for a long time. The plants, I think, have been a little too strong for multiple seasons now, so to make them a little bit less durable is a positive. Zigzag 55-55, another one that I think needed to be touched up. This was just crazy. This 60-60 was so much. We shaved 10 off of the entire stats. It's going to add up, I tell you that. Now Hair going to 115, I think this was due as well, given the popularity of it. The shield drops to 20. This doesn't really do a whole lot overall, though, because they've changed the way that skill works. I was talking to Theban about it earlier. I think that this actually ends up being a difference of like 3 damage, but I guess that's better than nothing. So Fishknack dropping to 80. I think this is because, again, has to be one of the most used cards last season with the double bugs running rampant. Happy to see this. I think double bug Aqua was too strong, very, very RNG dependent build with the discards, and I'd like to see even more changes made in that department, hopefully at some point. Grass Snake going to 20, I like that as well. I think that those poison teams were still just way too dominant and beefy and powerful. Now here she is, right here, the Anemone nerf. Let's talk a little more about it. I think that the thing that 1437 was saying is that when you shave off 10 damage here, you shave 5 off of hair, which also gets played with that build, right? It's usually hair and eggshell on the backdoor bird. You've now eliminated, including eggshell, it's like 35 damage or something like that across the board of all the cards that you're using, which is just a slaughter. I do think that a nerf is fine, but you don't want to make a build completely unplayable. I don't really think that that's good for the balance of the game. Give it a little more damage, you know, that's kind of what I say here. Now, Pocky going to 120, it's okay, but what I would have liked to see here is something related to this card losing its damage bonus once the bugs are dead. Because to me, if you have 2 bugs and then they both die, it seems a little out of whack that that card is still ripping off so much damage to plants and to all classes, really. So I think this is, you know, again, my biggest issue with this patch is that I do think double bug Pocky is still too strong. I could be wrong. I have to see how this plays out. I might even play around with that team in the offseason to see how strong it is. I mean, if it doesn't get nerfed anymore, it might be a front runner for season 20 again as well. We are just going to have to see. Hotbutt going to 80 attack. Now, I know what's happening here. This is so that Carrot can become a little more viable, which we're going to see later on. I like it. We want to spread more value across cards that are never used. And with these base stats and the effect of turning off mouth cards, this was just so much better than Carrot. And now it's got a little bit of competition. Eggshell going to 110. I think it makes sense. Now, you know I love this card. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite card in the game. So I'm sad to see the damage drop. However, I mean, for what it could do, 120 damage, and it's the most manipulative ability in the game to draw your opponent away at critical points in time. It seems appropriate that 10 damage was knocked off here. Bone Sail going from 80 to 70. I like that too because this card was ridiculous at 80, especially on the Dusks. Cactus goes back to 110. Good stuff in my book. I think, you know, I was upset to see it go to 115 last season after the plants were just so widespread. Now, Pincer and Parasite, again, I was expecting more here. I don't necessarily think just making it that you have to pair it is enough for how RNG focused this build is. This is another problematic build within the game that makes it very not fun to play because on the bug side, you're spamming cards, and if you're facing that build, you're spamming cards because you don't want to lose your valuable cards. There's not much thinking that goes into it. Indes suggested that with Parasite and Pincer, the player who is losing his cards should be able to select which ones are getting discarded, and I love that idea. I was hoping they were going to implement it. They didn't, but maybe they will make a change here before season starts. It just adds a little more strategy. You have to be smart about what you want to let go of and what you don't, as opposed to it being so RNG dependent. It's still strong if you're playing discards because you're still eliminating options and making life difficult for your opponent. So I think that would be great. They did nerf the damage on Parasite by 10. So at the end of the day, I won't be too mad if it doesn't change. Oranda going to 110. Ouch. And 5 shield gone. Ouch. Oh, I mean, this hurts. This really hurts. A lot of Aqua users. And now Aquas are looking at less and less 120 damage cards as time goes on. However, I can't be too mad. The fishes have been doing so well in Arena for a long time. Even toward the end of last season, we were seeing them start to make a resurgence. I used them last season, so I'm not going to complain too much. They're probably not going to fix it, but maybe, if we're lucky, we'll see a little boost here on this card. Now, Shrimp losing 5 damage. That's just so that the Aquas can't just snap off birds anymore with 2 cards. However, I don't think they need to do this if they change the skill bonus. That was just a matter of the way that the skill was adding up last season. So, you know, perhaps that should go back to 30. Scarab, absolutely crazy to make it a debuff so Bidens can remove it. So, I mean, we'll have to see how they decide to adjust that. Sponge is receiving a lot of complaints out there, and I completely understand why. This is an insane boost to the stats of this card. going from 60 damage to 70 and 5 extra shield. Typically this will get played at the midline. You are going to have some ridiculous Axie compositions being built out here. I understand wanting to buff it because literally no one was using this card last season, but at the same time, I think this should get toned back even just a little bit. Slight nerf on Arco seems appropriate. It doesn't really do that much damage. I know it's, again, one of the most popular cards, but I think shaving off any damage from it would have been overkill, so a little bit off of this shield is nice. You could probably even drop that to 40 shield, to be honest with you. They also made it so you have to combo this with another card, so guys, get used to that, because I've noticed some players just playing one Arco thinking they're going to speed up. No, not anymore. You have to prepare. You have to have a little bit of a fuller hand, which I also think is a really nice way of nerfing this card a bit. They just clarify that Little Branch, you actually need 2 plant cards to trigger its bonus crit chance by 20%. So that's cool to know exactly how that card works now. I think there was some confusion there for a while, and this could be a really cool one to start seeing on plants a little more often. Okay, heading into the buffs, let's start with Risky Fish. It gets 5 extra shield. Now, you know, I'm an Aqua user. I would love to see every Aqua card get buffed up. It's one of my favorite builds. That's not going to happen, and I'll take the 5 extra shield. I'm not going to complain too much on that. Shoal's Star going to 115 and getting 5 extra shield. I think this is really nice, and to be fair, in hindsight, as far as Oranda is concerned, that card really did have the monopoly on Aqua Horn cards. So I do think it's nice to have competition and see something else get used. This card was totally dead when they nerfed it. I will be experimenting with it myself. Maybe it's a nice alternative to Oranda. Cuckoo goes to 35 shield, which is nice. This card is definitely more viable now. I think that we saw it disappear quite a bit last season. I've been playing a few games this offseason and definitely seeing it a lot more, which is great. If you're a Cuckoo Aqua backline user, you're going to be happy. If you're running a Herinator or Bifinator, you're happy. Cupid gets 30 shield. Now this just makes sense as far as usability. Once again, the extra shield makes this a little more attractive. I like what they're doing with birds. They're trying to level it out a little bit more and bring in some of these cards that we're seeing no usage. Silence Whisperer, I mean, come on, it's just nobody cares. No one's going to use this card, right? Heal front teammate for 120 HP. Here's the problem. Where does this go? A backliner? And then what? Do you have a 0 cost on that backliner too to avoid stuns? Now you have 2 extremely weak cards when it comes to damage output. I think you're going to need a non-zero cost backliner to make this work, but then it's tricky. Very energy intensive, pulling off the timing. It has to be a fast Axie on the backline like a bird, but hey, prove me wrong, guys. Come out there. Somebody show me an amazing Silence Whisper build, but I think that's going to be hard to do. Tiny Dino going to 85 damage. I honestly think this should be a 90 damage card, and here's why. This is useless before round 5, and Axie Infinity is such a fast-paced game these days that a lot of the time your backliner is under threat by round 5 or 4, and you're now praying to get this off and get value out of it, and you're holding a dead card in your hand for all the rounds prior. So I think if it was 90 damage, it would just do heaps to every class, and it would make holding out for that round so much more worth it. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of usage out of this card this season. Oh, guys, by the way, I might be wrong on some of this stuff, right? We have to see how it plays out, see how creative people get. This is all speculation. Just because I say something about a card, that doesn't mean that you should sell your Axie or not consider using it. I'm just one opinion out there. This stuff takes time to develop, that's for sure. Hermit goes to 120 shield. Maybe we see that a little bit more on Aqua tanks up front. Bamboo Shoot gets a buff on its shield. It's now 80 and 80. The problem here is, where are we going to see this used? To get the bonus on this card, you have to chain it for 20% extra shield, and that means throwing it on either your mid or backline Axie as well. It just does abysmal damage, and also if you're chaining it, that means that your mid and back Axie aren't getting the benefits of the shield when doing it. So I think it's a really out of place card in the game. It needs more work for it to be useful. Cloud goes to 110 damage, 40 shield. I don't know, I think this might be worth playing around with. In a 1v1 situation, maybe a 40 shield card on a bird makes a big difference in terms of survivability. I don't know, I might pick up a Cloud bird. Also, what ends up in last last stand a lot of the time are plants up front. And this card allows your Axie to bypass the last stand of your opponent. So you might be able to severely catch your opponent off guard with a cloud attack. Hungry Birds, sticking with the theme of making a wider range of bird cards useful. The damage is so important, 120. That matches Peace Treaty, which really was the end-all be-all when it came to bird mouth cards. And now we have another option, which I like. Trump. Here we go. It's the talk of the town. Everybody is so interested in this card, and for good reason. 125 damage is just so much, and you get a bonus when you play this in a chain. Really, all that this is a question of now is, well, what's the perfect Trump build? And we don't know. That's going to take some time to figure out. How do you balance this so that you still have outplay potential, a high shield card, or an energy steal, right? Because if you only have Trump and high throttle aggression, you're going to get outplayed once you start to climb the ranks. That's not enough to make it in Axie Infinity. You need to find balance, and we're going to have to see who comes out with the most brilliant Trump composition. I've definitely been working on it. I'm trying to figure out how to get this card and do it right. I'll keep you guys posted. Confident to 40 shield. Does anyone care? Not really, because beasts are just so terrible in 1v1 situations. I would love for this card to shine. I'd love to see it. You guys probably don't even know how this works, but when you boost your morale, beasts can end up with 4, 5, or 6 last stand bars, which is insane. And when you do pull this card off, it's one of the most satisfying ways to win in Axie Infinity. Also, they have buffed Rice, which I think is a really big deal because this is one that's very often played with Confident, or at least it was back in the day. Beast backliners are also vulnerable to backdoors. So it's going to take a very beautiful combination of Axies that I can't necessarily think of right now to make this work. Potato Leaf, ugh, no. It's just a matter of the other plant tails being so much better, but I don't know. I'm waiting to see somebody do something special with this. It just hasn't happened yet. Imp, I like the buff. Again, makes Rimp users even more happy. Those budget beasts that come into the game have even more firepower, which I think is a good thing. Gila, oh boy, these are some crazy base stats. 165 total, 100 damage, 65 shield. Most cards are in the 150 range. The thing about it though, you need some poison to trigger its effect, which is that it applies attack down to poisoned targets. I don't know. A unique comp might work. You need some beast and bug damage involved. You probably need Scarab once they fix that card. But if there's some cheap Gila Axies out there, you know, give it a shot. Definitely crazy base stats. Catfish goes to 90. I like this. No one was playing this card. A little extra damage goes a long way. Carrot, there's the new hot butt competitor. We'll see. I actually think there might be some use for this at the midline. When you're getting closer to that 1v1 and you're trying to eliminate the opponent's midline, if they're throwing up carrots and regaining energy, it is really annoying and can put them in an advantageous position heading into that 1v1. Raven, 120 damage. This prevents the opponent from pulling off crits, which is nice. Again, makes some cheaper bird builds out there probably a little easier to scoop now and have more playability. Gerbil goes to 50 damage. I don't think this matters. I think this is one of the worst cards in the game with the way it is. 50 damage, 20 shield. Using this on a beast, what are you going to kill at the midline? An Aqua? No, not with 3 beast damage cards and this that does 50 damage. You're not even going to kill a plant most of the time because they're going to anticipate this a bit and just need to play something to survive, and then you wasted all this firepower. This has a long way to go before we see it in the meta, in my opinion. Feather Fan, they gave it more damage and took away some shield. I still don't think we see it used very much. Caterpillars, oh boy, 170 base stats now, 110 damage, 60 shield. This is a fantastic card if you're looking for that beast or bug damage on an Aqua build, perhaps. This is definitely now one of the strongest bug cards when it comes to its firepower and defense. And Timber going to 90, I like it. They buffed it last season. We still didn't see it very much. 90 now is really intriguing, and this could work on a plant up front, an Aqua tank up front. Overall, I love the direction that we're heading. I think that the goal with all of these updates should be to help reduce RNG. It's already a big factor in this game, and really my biggest critique still is really the fact that discards haven't changed a whole lot, and I think this is the least fun mechanic in the game. When you're facing this over and over in Arena, it just becomes monotonous. There's not a whole lot to think about. Both players spam cards. I'd like to see them rework this and not remove it entirely, but just make it a little bit more strategic for both players involved. God, I hope they do something before the next season comes out, but if not, they made some changes. That is nice. I'll take it, right? And I know there's a lot of players out there using these builds. I don't want you guys to get wrecked. I just want the game to be more fun. That's it. I really love that we're in a trial period as well and that the team is listening to feedback. That is just fantastic. We don't want to end up in the same position as last season where we want to be making changes halfway through or there's a completely busted mechanic like skill change. And already we've seen that we're picking up on things that if they just released this in season 20 and for instance Scarab was now totally useless versus plants, that would be terrible. It would be so bad and there'd be so many complaints and rightfully so, and then the team would have to backtrack. So I think that this is a really great way to go about it for the time being, and I'm very excited to see what the final chart looks like. I'll definitely be covering that on the channel. It'll be a shorter video. I'll probably just highlight the final changes, but I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of these changes and what you think needs to be fixed before we go into season 20. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Follow me on Twitter. It's at Elijah_MT8. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace.